This is the Spartan from Gavkoo. Larger blade for brush, cutting wood. I'll have the full specifications down in the description. The interesting thing for me about this knife is going to be comparing it to some blades from other makers. It's a big blade by Tang. Survival sword from Omnivore Blade Works. Voyager from Collie Harris. So they're different steels, different stock thicknesses, different primary grinds, different heat treatments. So it's going to be very interesting to work with all the blades. Now I'm going to start off very light. This is with the weak grip up front. You can see it's a multi-position grip. This is essentially the furthest forward you can go for power chopping. You can go a bit forward more still for precision cutting, but this is your most front forward or weakest primary chopping grip, and you can keep shifting back, of course, to force more weight, more length forward. But since I haven't used it first, start off with the weakest position, weakest swings. It's about -1, -2, it's not that cold. See the ice? And you can see this doesn't hold any resistance to it at all. So already it's obvious that this has more than enough power for light to moderate limbing, because it's just sailing through the smaller wood. And again, this is weak grip forward with mainly just wrist snaps. Thicker plywood. Get away. Ah, finally. And you'll see the wood is shattering a bit, not being cleanly cut. That's not a lower performance or indication of poor cutting ability. It's about -2, so the wood is a bit brittle and it's not going to smoothly come apart like it will when it's warmer. Now the other thing, to enhance the chopping ability, I'm actually going through on an angle in both directions. So I'm cross graining the wood this way, and I'm also cutting through at an angle this way. And again, that allows for your cleanest cut because it pushes the wood out of the way, rather than if you go 90-90, because again you'll compact the wood and force it to actually break. Your standard piece of strapping. Ah, perfect. So, gotta go up to a piece of strapping to get beyond wrist. See if I do a heavier wrist cut. No. And that's with a little bit of elbow, so you can see that completely. Can't slow it down, but does need to go beyond wrist. So this is more of a teaser trailer than anything else, because I want to get out and do some heavy woodwork with it. But first impressions are as I sort of expected. Very nice blade. Very high level of cutting ability and fluidity. You can see it sailing through the wood, and that comes of course from the combination of relatively thick stock, which will reduce your binding, but it has a full taper to a relatively thin and relatively fine ground edge, so you have very high penetration but also nice fluidity from the spine, which is also fully rounded off for a number of reasons. This is different than the standard Excalibur in a couple of effects that you should be able to see from this video. The tang is fully enclosed, again because I work with knives in relatively low temperatures, and you can see it's -2 out now. This is relatively uncomfortable for me to hold on to this blade. -2 against bare steel is not overly pleasant. This isn't steel, right? So I can easily hold on to this, no problem. It is checkered in this region right here. I do a lot of heavy power cutting. Most of my cutting functionally when I'm not out tooling around is actually maintaining some land that's owned by the family, clearing it out, cutting down the dead wood because I burn wood. So you're only cutting for about 25% of the time, and the other 75% you're moving the wood, piling it up, burning some of the brush. So the style of cutting I developed over the years is an intermittent, very slow but heavy power cuts. So I'll want it aggressively textured up here to give me very high security, and that allows me on the final cut when I'm coming down into it to tighten up my grip and really push into the cut with my hand and my wrist. So I need a bit of texture here to maintain that grip. If you're cutting with a looser grip and you're using more of a snap type cut, and especially if you're doing lower power, you want to keep your grip relatively loose, and you'll see that for people who do very high volumes of cutting. Like if you're continuously cutting brush for about an hour, you won't want even a light checkering because it can get abrasive. But again, I do more intermittent work, so that's what I use. So I like this as well. I think I'm going to have to make this a bit more textured, but overall it's performing, you know, first impressions are relatively good, and I think I'm going to be very pleased with this. And it's going to be interesting, like I said, to run it against some other blades, both the high-end ones that I just showed and some of the very basic blades, like the Magnum Kukuri machete from Cold Steel, the Fisker's brush axe, and even some smaller axes and hatchets. Let's see how that turns out. And of course, similar as on the Voyager from Kylie Harris, I got a really nice sheet from Bruce, and I'll put a link to his website down below as well. Very same, my sheet tastes are very, very simple. This is just a basic sheet with a dangler so it doesn't get caught up on anything, and I don't want retention straps. They get in the way, so I'm not really concerned about, you know, jumping out of helicopters and all that kind of fun stuff. So I don't need secondary retention. I have very high retention on the blade itself. That's essentially all I want.